Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our research seminar. Happy to see you all here, and I'm sure we're going to have an interesting time. Before we start anything, shall we just pause for a word of prayer? Dear kind and loving Father in heaven, thank you so much for the blessings that you have given us throughout this week, Lord, for helping us to see the end of this week, Lord, and for granting us the opportunity to come together, to learn together, to share together, and to enrich our experience. And Lord, I'm asking you to please be with us here and to guide everything that goes on here this afternoon, Father. May we listen, may we understand, and as a result, may we leave here more knowledgeable. Father in heaven, be with the speaker and be with everything and help us to have a profitable time. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. Okay, I'm just gonna, before Dr. Darren starts, I'm just gonna give a short introduction. So, as you know, the presentation today is going to be by Darren Thomas, Dr. Darren Thomas, who is assistant professor here at our university. And he teaches across two departments, Faculty of Arts and Humanities and also Faculty of Education. And he teaches both at undergrad level and at postgraduate level as well. Dr. Darren has worked throughout Southeast Asia, so he has experience of working in different contexts and at different levels as well, different levels of education. So in terms of research, his primary interests lie in educational technology and also TESOL, and his expertise is in quantitative research methods. So I'm looking forward to this presentation. I'm sure we all are. We're going to see Dr. Darren coming from a slightly different angle today. Normally, he's teaching us about how to do research. Today, he's going to walk us through a piece of research that he's done. So it's going to be a very interesting presentation. So right now, I'll hand over to Dr. Darren Thomas.
All right, thank you very much. Very happy to be here. Glad you guys all came for this exciting presentation. I hope I don't disappoint you. You can see the title of my presentation right here, E-Learning Activity During the Pandemic. So I'm not talking to strangers. We were all here last semester. You're sitting in class and all of a sudden there is no more class. And I saw an opportunity to obviously try to do some sort of research to try to understand what was going on. So, it's a typical research paper. I'll walk you through my introduction. I'll give you brief highlights from the review of literature because that's not all that interesting. And then we'll kind of touch on the methodology and get to the results, which is what most people care about. So here we go. Okay, so here's kind of what was happening. Last semester, second semester of last year, we had the pandemic come out, the coronavirus. And we're talking about 1.6 billion students who were no longer able to go to class as we traditionally define it in terms of going to a classroom, sitting with a teacher, etc. This was denied to 1.6 billion students. That's the absolute number. In terms of relative percentages, 91% of the students on this planet were no longer able to go to class. And I'm sure for many of the parents in here, you experienced that yourself, trying to figure out how to deal with your kids while trying to figure out how to deal with other people's kids, because we teach students, right? So now that's the world. But if you look specifically at Thailand, we're talking about 20 million students who were affected by the shutdown. And among that 20 million, about 20,000 of them were international students. Again, these are rough estimates in terms of how many kids are in Thailand, not exact. So, of course, nobody was planning to shut down their campus, obviously. That's not something you plan on a strategic level. So, of course, higher education all over the planet, not just specifically here, but all over the planet, they were unprepared. And so many students were lost and discouraged. Some people went home, some people stayed on campus, but you can't go anywhere, you can't do anything. There's all these rules now, everybody's nervous, like, well, how dangerous is this virus, etc. And so there was lots and lots of problems. But the default that many universities fell to in order to continue providing education was, of course, e-learning. Something that was not even an option 20, 25 years ago. They were like, we're going online. Now, every university was not able to pull that off. I've talked to friends from other countries. They said, we just sent them home and gave up. Literally, they shut it down completely. I have friends in other countries where they're trying to finish second semester during first semester. That's the reality for many universities on the planet right now. All right, so the purpose of my study was to investigate the online activity of international university students during the coronavirus global pandemic. And why, or you could say my justification for this was to provide insights for educators and administrators who are trying to figure out what to do and how students are behaving in the online learning context. So in terms of my research questions, I'm trying to look at the relationship between online learning activity and the other variables that I found, age, class level, gender, etc. So let's see here. Now, I just want to make sure that we understand exactly what e-learning is in terms of my own paper. So e-learning is defined as a specific form of online learning in which there is a focus on communication, education through some form of a delivery method such as a learning management system. In other words, e-learning in this context involves a learning management system, for example, Moodle. Now, everybody was not using a learning management system. Again, this is anecdotal evidence. I talked to friends down in southern Thailand. They were using Facebook groups, and people were using, some other tool that they found online. Everybody had their little gimmick to continue teaching throughout the pandemic. But in this context, we're looking at people who were using a learning management system, such as Moodle or Blackboard, etc. All right. So, to try to summarize my review of literature in one slide, here's what I found. Common complaints throughout this crisis include the competency of the teachers. In other words, the incompetency of the teachers. They didn't know how to teach online, okay? So students complained about that. You also had complaints about social presence. Teachers would set up stuff on Moodle or whatever they were using and then disappear. All right, so they were not there supporting the students as they were learning. They were not responding to messages. They were not responding to requests for information, etc. All these things were going on. There was also a complaint about a huge load of assignments. In other words, teachers said, do everything online, submit everything online, and the amount of assignments grew exponentially compared to what was expected in a traditional face-to-face setting. Also, we had problems with planning, like what do you want me to do online? In other words, the problems that we had here were extrapolated over the entire planet, essentially. There was nothing unique about the struggles of this particular university. Now, another section of my review of literature talks about, okay, what makes a good online student? And to make it as simple as possible, a good online student has something called intrinsic motivation. In other words, you don't have to push them to do something. And of course, that's a very unusual trait to find at the university level here. Obviously, you normally have to kick them to do anything. So when you have to send them away or lock them in the dormitory, academic performance may suffer. Another trait of excellent online students is something called self-regulation. That's a fancy psychology word for self-control. Being able to make a plan, to set goals and find a way to achieve them. Again, to take a large problem, cut it into small pieces, and find ways to complete it step by step. That's called self-regulation. Again, this is a trait you don't commonly find among university students often. Now, in terms of where did I find differences at, in terms of between good and bad, active and not active, some of the factors were age, how old they are. Older students tend to do better online than younger students, unless they get too old, then it starts to go down. Major, all right, different between social sciences and the hard sciences, for example, in biology, chemistry, etc. Gender, male and female. Geography, how close they are to the university. And of course, class level, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, etc. All right, so here are some of the descriptive statistics from the paper. And so I know this is hard to see, but this is region. And so we have 4 regions here. We have mainland Southeast Asia. That's all the ones on the mainland, Cambodia, Laos, etc. This is how many people were in my sample size here. Over 200 were from mainland Southeast Asia. Then we have something called maritime Southeast Asia. That's like all the islands and parts of Malaysia, if you will. Next we had Asians, but not Southeast Asians, Indian, Japan, Korea, whatever. And then lastly, anybody else was from Africa or a Western country. So you can see where most of my students came from here. All right, so most of you are from mainland Southeast Asia, but we have some significant groups over here. This particular category right here is gender. So almost the same in terms of male and females. So about over 200 males and about 160 females or so. My total sample size was about 380. All right, now, this is class level. Now, it's not in order because the computer program is kind of weird, but this is freshmen right here, about 150. Sophomores, 125-ish. Then I had juniors here, about 60 or so, and then seniors, about 55 or so. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but it's very common for the classes to shrink as they progress because people drop out, people transfer, whatever. And then right here I have major. Let me move that real quick. So these are my major. All right. So for major, this is IT right here, a little over 50. Business over 100. Education, about 130 or so. English, science, and theology as we go through. All right, now, this is mature versus immature student. I define a mature student as somebody who is 26 or older, because generally in Asia, they're done by then. Normally you come in at 18, you're done at 22. So if they're over 26, I classify them as an older student. Now, the reason I did that was because mature students sometimes struggle with technology. They're not as comfortable with, click, 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 here and there, here and there. So I was curious, let me see what happens if I divide my sample based on how old they are. All right? And I couldn't just do, 18, 19, 22, all the way to 40. Because, 80% of the students are between 18 and 22, so it kind of defeated the purpose. So instead, for those of you who are listening, I made a categorical variable where I divided them. If you're over 26, you're here. If you're under 26, you're here. That's what I did. All right, so here's the research design. It was a cross-sectional design. All I did was I went to the website and I scraped the data from Moodle. There was nothing fancy. There were no people involved, just data. Didn't have to talk to anybody, just scrape it. It's commonly available on the internet. So we scraped the data from Moodle, and what I mean by scrape, that's a technical term where you click, 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 use some HTML code, and you can pull it down from the website like that. That's what we did. And so the variables we use are as follows. Now, I had to figure out a way to define e-learning activity. You have to define it when you are trying to make a paper. So I defined it as this: the number of clicks inside a class. Inside Moodle, every time you click on something, it is logged. And so what I do is per class, I figure out how many times did person A click inside this class. That was my proxy for e-learning activity. So it's not the best measurement, but it was what I had available. I was not planning a paper, but I had free time, because didn't have to teach my classes anymore. So this is how I measure e-learning activity. The more clicks inside a course, the assumption of this paper is the more active they are. Are we okay? Now again, we can agree or disagree, but it was a tool for measuring, and that's how I defined it in this paper. Now, the other variables are, of course, gender, major, class level, region, and, of course, maturity. Greater than 26, okay, they're mature. Less than 26, immature, right? Okay, here we go. Now, for the data analysis, we had a problem with the data, and this is to be expected if you're a little bit more familiar with statistics. This up here was what my dependent variable, e-learning activity, looked like originally. Now, when you're trying to do regression analysis, you don't want it to look like this. You want it to look like this. So I had to do something called a log transformation of the data. I'm only sharing this with you because maybe some of you are not familiar with this. So let's do a little bit of math, shall we? Okay, maybe you're not ready. It's all right. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so I had a problem. Let's say I have two numbers here. Let's say I have a number like, 100, and I have another number here, 10. Now, the difference between these two numbers is 90. In other words, they're really fall apart. And when they're far apart like that, you get this huge variance and you're not able to explain anything in your model, all right? So what I did was I transformed these using a logarithm. Logarithm is like the opposite of exponents, if you will. So let's have some fun here. Okay, be patient. Let's see here. Whoops, sorry. That's in the way. Okay, so log base 10 of 10 equals what? So let me translate that for you. What exponent do I have to raise 10 to get 10? Can anybody help me here? Oh, excellent. Now, if you're lost, just count how many zeros. That's it. Just count the zeros. That's the answer. All right, now check this out. What number do I have to raise 10 to get 100? All right, again, if you're lost, just count the zeros. All right, now here's the thing. Instead of having a difference of 90 now, I now have a 2 minus 1. I have a difference of 1. All my data is now closer together. Are we okay? It used to be 90 units apart. Now they're 1 unit apart. And when they're 1 unit apart, the data becomes normal, that nice, beautiful bell-shaped curve. Are we okay? That's all we did here. It's not that complicated. So then we go from having this thing, which is normal for count data, this is a Poisson distribution, to having almost a normal distribution. We have a little problem right here, but it's close enough. That's what we did. So when you're dealing with funky data, you have to have tools to make it normal, a bell-shaped curve. That's what we're talking about here. If you don't do that, if you have funky data, your results will be funky, all right? That's what happens. And so by knowing these tools, how to make a histogram and how to make the data to look normal, you can have more confidence in your results. That's what's happening here. Now, so that's what I did for the regular multiple regression. But there was one other tool that I used, and that was something called logistic regression. So let me see if I can make this clear. What I did for logistic regression was this. The top 1/3 of my data, I classified them as active users because they were at the top. The bottom 2/3 of my data, I classified them as inactive users because they didn't use it as much as the people in the top 1/3. So let me see if I can draw you a picture of this. All right, so let's see here. Can I move this over? Okay, so this is my data right here. Just pretend it's this little bar. And essentially what happened is I ranked them from the least active to the most active. And if you were in the top 1/3, that's about this, you were called active. If you were in the bottom 2/3 here, you were called inactive. That's what I was doing. And so I did that because now I have two categories. And when you want to use logistic regression, the dependent variable must be categorical. And so I have two categories, active and inactive. And I took that from my other data. That's what I did. All right. Here we go. Okay, let me zoom in here because you can't see that. All right. So this is the actual descriptive statistics. So if you look here, for a student who is mature versus immature, if they are mature, the average number of clicks in the class was 860. All right? If they were immature, 827. For gender, it looks like males were more active than females, 872 to 779. Okay? Now, for major, these are the following. Business, about 780. Education, 940. English, 600. IT, 900. Religion, 730. Science, 760. Now, this is not a competition, so, I don't want you guys to start making extra activities to try to boost your numbers. That's not the point. We're just trying to describe here, all right? So it's not a race, all right? Now, by region, this is what I found. Mainland Southeast Asia, 900. Maritime, 750. Asia, that's non-Southeast Asian, 915. And Africa and the West, about 600 or so, 590. Now, this is the most interesting one for me, in my opinion. If you can see right there, freshmen were the most active. Again, I don't know what's going on here. I thought that was interesting. And you can see it just declines. Sophomore, then junior, then seniors. So either the freshmen are sweating or they're not efficient. I don't know. It's not clear. But you can clearly see that freshmen are working twice as hard online compared to seniors. And so this already leads to a conclusion that, of course, they probably need more help because they're not efficient. Or it might be they're just excited to use Moodle. We can speculate forever. But it's very, very clear. And again, this caught me by surprise. Let me zoom out. Okay, clicked, moving on here. All right, this is still too small. I have to make it bigger. Whoops. Okay, let's see here if I can make this nice and clear. Okay, these are this is probably too big. This is the multiple regression results. So, okay, let me see if I can make this clear. Now, here's what's going on here. This is the old-fashioned regression way. In other words, it's like the correlation between this particular variable and my dependent variable. So, that's what this is right here. This right here is called the exponentiated beta, and that explains like the relative percentage increase. So, how do I make this clear? All right, so let's check this one right here. Africa and the West. Now, look closely here. Who's missing? Mainland Southeast Asia is missing. So everything here under region is being compared to mainland Southeast Asia. All right, so now listen carefully. The difference between mainland and Africa is negative 0.36. In other words, it's negative. And this is what's happening here. Africa is, like, I believe, 30% lower in terms of their mean compared to mainland Southeast Asia. 30% lower. That's what their mean is. All right? Now, moving on here to business, you can see here. Let me move this up a little bit. Okay, yeah, where is it? Okay, right here. Put all the majors together. Now, if you look at major, IT is missing. In other words, IT is what everything else is being compared to. So if you look right here for major, this is what's happening. Okay, so for science, if compared to a science major, an IT major has a 35% higher mean on average, okay? Compared to religion, there's a 39% higher mean here, etc. For English, the IT major, the mean is 33% higher. All right, this is what's happening. And the reason the numbers are not exactly the same is because when I did the descriptive statistics, there were no other variables in the model. But now I'm using other variables at the same time while I'm still getting a mean. That's why they're different, okay? So this is what's happening here. When someone is an English major compared to IT, IT has a 33% higher mean. When someone is a science major, again, IT 35% higher. When someone is religion major, again, IT 39% higher. And then down here, I start going into the class levels. So what's happening here, again, if you look at class level, freshman is missing because everything is being compared to someone who's a freshman. So a freshman compared to a junior, the freshman is going to have a mean that's 47% higher, 49% higher. And this should sound familiar because you saw the numbers a few minutes ago. Are we awake? I can go back to the slide. So you can see here that freshmen are always more active online. It shows up in the descriptive statistics, and it's also showing up here in the regression model. That's what's happening. Now for gender, there was no difference. See, there's no star here, no difference. So even though the males had a higher number, when you start to compare it and extrapolate to the population, there's no difference. That's what we're trying to say. Okay. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay. Wait, didn't I already do this one? Wait a minute, didn't I already do this? Wait. This looks familiar. Didn't I already do this? Wait. Oh, yeah, there's one more thing. Okay, you can't see this very well, but the R squared for the model was only 17%. So let's not get too excited about these. There's a whole lot of variance that's not being explained. But, I did what I had with what I had. Okay, now this is the, the logistic regression results. So I'm going to make this as simple as possible. This is what you have to do to understand this. Let me move this. Okay, so what you do is this. You take this number right here and you subtract 1 from it. That's what you do. And that tells you how likely that person is to be an active user compared to the other group. So right here we got Maritime, Asia, and Africa. Mainland Southeast Asia is missing again. All right? So Africa, if you subtract this, you're going to get 57, minus 57. So if someone is from Africa or the West, they are 1 minus 0.43. They are 57% less likely to be active compared to someone who is from mainland Southeast Asia. Are we okay? Because mainland South Asia is not here. Okay, now let's see here for business. Okay, let's do this one. Business, remember IT is missing. IT is the comparison group. So let's see here. 1 minus 0.53, 0.47. So if someone is a business major, they are 47% less likely to be active compared to an IT major. Are we okay? Education, no difference. English, all right, 0.28. Subtract that, let's see here, 0.72. If someone is an English major, they are 72% less likely to be active compared to an IT major. Are we okay? All right, science, again, negative number here. We subtract that, let's see, 0.71. If someone is a science major, they are 71% less likely to be active online compared to an IT major. That's what's happening there. Any more? Okay. Religion. And let's do also, here we go, religion. So 1 minus 0.13, that's 0.87. If somebody is a religion major, they are 87% less likely to be active when compared to an IT major. Let's see here, a junior. Now remember, freshman is missing, so everything's being compared to freshmen. If somebody is a freshman, let's see here, 0.47. I'm sorry, if someone is a junior, they are 47% less likely to be active online compared to a junior, I'm sorry. If somebody is a junior, they're 47% less likely to be active online compared to a freshman. Seniors, they are 75% less likely to be active online compared to a freshman. And sophomore, there's no difference because there's no star here. And there is no difference for male and female, no star. All right. Let's zoom out and finish. Okay, page down. Okay, so this is kind of what I just told you. If I went too fast, we can go through it again together. All right. So if a participant was from Africa or the West, they were 57% less likely to be an active user when compared to an individual who was from mainland Southeast Asia. If a participant was a business major, they were 47% less likely to be active. If they were an English major, they were 72% less likely to be active. Science major, 71%. Religion major, 87% less likely. For class level, juniors were 47% less likely to be active compared to freshmen. Seniors were 75% less likely to be active. And there was no difference when I compare freshmen with sophomores. Okay? All right, so let's conclude this. First of all, you can probably tell freshmen were much more active online than other class levels. Again, we can speculate, but we need to examine why. What's going on with the freshmen? Maybe, like I said, I told you it might be excitement, it might be ignorance, maybe they don't know what's going on, but they are doing many more clicks than the other classes on campus. Also, information technology majors were the most active majors for the regression models, for both regression models in terms of e-learning behavior. Now, again, this shouldn't be surprising because IT majors love IT. So they're playing around, they're messaging each other, they're messing with this and that because that's what they like to do. In addition, the teachers in the IT department, we are assuming they're more comfortable with things like Moodle, so they're probably doing more activities online. Again, this is all speculation. So we need to try to figure out the quality. What are they doing? Is it more efficient or is it just more work? You understand? That's what we need to figure out. And students who were further away in terms of geography were not considered as active as users from Southeast Asia. So people from the West and Africa, they were much less likely to be active. And so they might need more support because, you know, maybe they live further away or maybe they're having a harder time on campus, or it could be they're just more efficient. We don't want to always assume negative things. Maybe they're more efficient online. We don't know. Because just because you're clicking doesn't mean you're getting work done. You understand? You can just look busy. All right, now let me tell you about some of my delimits here, obviously. So the context is limited to university students in Thailand, primarily international students. One thing I forgot to mention was I only took classes that had an online exam. Because when I was analyzing the data, if you didn't have an online exam, there was like no clicks in your class. But then if you had an online, there's like thousands of clicks. So I had to remove the people who did not have an online exam. Also, the R squared was low. I don't know how comfortable you are with regression, but 18% is very, very low. But again, I wasn't planning this paper. There was a disaster, a natural disaster, and I took advantage of it. So I wasn't able to design things quite like how I wanted to, but this is what was available when I needed to do, or when I wanted to do the study. And of course, all my data was mostly categorical. Male, class level, gender, immature versus immature. I didn't have a lot of different types of data that might help to improve the analysis. So that concludes the presentation. So do we take questions or? Okay, so I guess we could take some questions now if you want. Any questions, or can we just go home early? Yes, Jebamani.
Why was the comparison done between the freshmen with others?
In the regression model.
In the mean,
Yes. Let me see if I can make this clear. Let's see here. Okay, just give me a moment. All right. So here's what we were trying to do. When you are doing descriptive statistics, you are only looking at one variable at a time. So when I calculated the mean by class level, I'm only looking at one variable. But see, here's the thing. There are other things that affect that mean. Do you understand? But you cannot figure that out by just calculating the descriptive statistics. This is why we have inferential statistics. So when you make the regression model, it's kind of like this. Gender plus major plus class, et cetera, equals, e-learning activity. So now you can clearly see I have more variables here, and I'm better able to understand the differences in the means. Because when I do the descriptive statistic, I have one mean. But when I start throwing in these variables, I'm able to understand the differences between groups now. That's what's happening. All right? Okay, Dr. Kuhn?
Is it possible that the theology department, that they have the less likely to be active because maybe the nature of their classes do not need much of the clicking?
Yeah.
Is it possible?
Well, again...
But you're not trying to measure the
Yeah.
activeness, right?
Yeah. Well, I was, but it wasn't like to say, okay, you guys are like lazy, you guys are hardworking. It's just descriptive. I wanted to take a snapshot to see what was going on campus. It wasn't necessary to make like a judgment call. So the thing is, if they're learning, it doesn't matter, whatever. But what we're saying here is that they were less active compared to other students on campus. Now, we have to figure out, is that connected with their performance in terms of their knowledge and grades, or are they still doing fine? Because Moodle is a tool. That's all it is. And so, like I said, IT loves it because that's what they do.
Is it possible that maybe Moodle is not used much by that department?
Well, the information indicates that, but again, if they're learning, it doesn't really matter. Now, here's the thing. If I'm an administrator and I say, hey, we need to use Moodle, I can use this to motivate more participation in that department. But if I just want to see what's going on, I'm just curious, there's nothing to be concerned about. It all depends. How you use the data depends on what your goals are. All right? So if you're trying to see, well, what's going on around here, okay, maybe they need to do more. But if you're just curious, that's it. All right? Anybody else? Yes.
Somewhat related to Mrs. Jebamani's question.
Okay.
How did you decide on which your basis for comparison? For example, you took the freshmen and then you used that as your basis, and then you compared with the other classes. How did you know you should choose freshmen, and then later on you chose Southeast Asia? How did you come up with that decision?
Okay. Everyone's going to have a different answer, but I can explain to you my thought process. Basically, when I was doing the descriptive statistics, I saw the freshmen were the most active. So for me, that was my rationale for using them as the comparison. Okay, now I could have chose sophomores and I would have got slightly different numbers. Do you understand? I could have chose religion majors, and I would have got different numbers. But when I saw the activeness of the freshmen and when I saw the activeness of the IT majors, I decided to build my paper around comparing from that. But any other comparison would have been fine. It all depends about what you want to know. All right? Farrell, yes.
I'm just curious about the number of clicks.
Yeah.
Are the number of clicks taken as in how many logins or per student login? Because like if it's collective, like for example, like one me, I can click 10 times into the same website. Or is it 10 people that's actually clicking at the same time?
What I did was when I pulled the data from Moodle, I did it by class. So, okay, so Farrell is taking Introduction to Research. How many times did he click in this class? Okay, he clicked 800 times or whatever, you know. And so that's how I did it. I did it by the class. Okay. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
It's total for the whole class. All the students in the class.
Okay, here's the thing. Sometimes when you're doing research, especially when you start pulling stuff like for data science and stuff, you get missing data. So if I had missing data, that student was not in the final results because the computer does not like missing data. But so there might be a class of 20, I might have got 12. You understand? There might be a class of 40, I might have got 30 of them. So it wasn't about, and what I mean by class, I don't mean freshman, sophomore. I mean English 392. I mean IT 125. That's what I mean by class here. So sometimes that would affect the results.
But when you classify the juniors and seniors and so on, in one class there may be freshmen and sophomores also. When you put that category, you divide it.
Here's the thing. Let me see if I can draw you a picture. That might make more sense. So here's the thing. When I have my sample, I can calculate different means for different purposes. So I can take all freshmen and I can take, by telling the computer, I want the means for freshmen, it will ignore what class they're in terms of IT, English, or whatever. It'll take all the freshmen and calculate that mean and give it to me. Because the computer can, we call it subsetting. That's what it is. And so that's how I was able to get my answer. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
My question is, because there are so few Africans in this school.
We love the Africans.
then-
What are you talking about? Yeah.
But I see that there's a subset of Africans. Isn't the data terribly skewed? I mean, the whole school has about 30.
Wait. You came late. I said that maybe there's fewer clicks because they're more efficient. They don't have to work as hard as the Southeast Asians.
No, I'm not concerned whether they did more work or less. I'm just saying as a subset.
Yes, yes.
And when we compare them to Southeast Asia, if we took 100%, Africans in this school are, I think, 32 out of 950 something.
Yes,
so, I mean, how do you justify including such a small number to be a subset?
Well, when I used Africa, I said Africa and the West. So we're talking anybody from outside of Asia generally. So they could be from France, they could be from, US, they could be from Argentina, Africa and the West.
So what was the total number there?
Let me go back. I don't remember. Let's see here. Region. About 40, 35-ish, 40-ish. Now my sample size was only 380. So they represent about 8 or 9% of my sample. All right. Anybody else?
How did you choose your sample size from some few classes you chose?
Again, the criteria was they had to offer an online exam. At first, I just took everything. But then I noticed something, and this is why you check your descriptive statistics. I noticed that a lot of classes, if they didn't have an online exam, there was like no activity. So what made a class more active, in my opinion, was whether or not was how hard the final exam was. That's probably where most of the clicks came from, all right? Yeah, so that's how I did it. I didn't do Thai program because I couldn't really tell what was going on inside the Thai classes, okay? Yeah, does that answer your question?
I still thinking about where did you go to get that clicks.
Okay, well, there's a database inside, it's called a log. And the log, every time you click on something inside Moodle, it records your name. Okay, so if I go inside one of my classes, I tell my computer, because I did the analysis using R, tell me how many times does Darren's name appear? Darren's name appeared 800 times because he clicked 800 times. That's how I created my variable.
So it's not that the student log in, the student click.
It's all about the clicks. You can log in one time and click 100 times. You can log in 100 times and click never. You understand? That's how it works. So this was my proxy for e-learning behavior, showing that they were active or not active. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Sorry if I mean to be blunt. I want to know what is the validity of this research. How valid is it? Because you're basing on clicks, right? So is that data okay to make a research?
Of course it's okay. Okay, now, there are several things I share with you. One, the R-square is very low. R-square can go from almost 0 to 1. My R-square was 0.17, so that indicates a weakness. In other words, for further study, for further research, hey, we need to find a way to try to better measure this variance here, okay? And like I also mentioned, you know, I wasn't planning a study like, yeah, I'm gonna measure this during a virus crisis. You know, that wasn't in my long-term vision there. But I took advantage of the situation to try to learn something. So the validity is weak. We're not gonna deny that, but it was something or nothing, right? And so this is something compared to nothing. All right, anybody else? Who's that? Oh, well. Oh, okay, wow. All right, how can I help you?
How do you improve the R-square?
R-square will always improve. Oh, I'm sorry. She wanted to know, how do you improve the R-square? So, the R-square can always be improved by adding more variables and or finding a different way to measure your dependent variable. So, in other words, if I wanted to try to do something similar, I would have to find better predictor variables, better independent variables to try to improve what I'm trying to explain with my e-learning behavior. Yeah, so it's a work in progress.
I see. Now, if you have to do a follow-up study on this, what will you do differently?
Okay, if I wanted to do a follow-up study, what would I do differently? Well, I might want to try to examine what exactly are they doing. All I know now is that they're clicking. But I don't know, are they clicking on quizzes? Are they doing forums? You know, are they submitting assignments? So something more nuanced where I look at specifically their behavior inside a class rather than just their behavior in general might be able to provide something. I could be able to go to a department and say, students are not doing a lot of quizzes. Maybe you want to encourage that, or, you know, the students are not really participating in the forums. Maybe you want to provide some support for that, as an example. All right. Yes. Okay, anybody else? Okay. Well, I'm glad that you're happy. I hope it made sense. I know I like to talk fast. But this is kind of what you have to do when you want to try to study something in a practical way. So,
well, thank you so much for Dr. Thomas for your wonderful research presentation, and I'm sure you still have lots of questions would like to ask him. He will be available sometime. All right, Sabbath is coming, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this time. Next time, we might invite another teacher back there. Dr. Valemba, you might be the next speaker. We don't know yet. All right. Okay, well, before we dismiss, we would like to maybe have a word of prayer. Let's pray together. Father in heaven, we thank you so much for Dr. Darin, that he gave us the chance to learn lots of things and open our eyes, and so that we get to know more about research. Lord, please be with each one of us as we going home and prepare for Sabbath. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you so much.
No problem.